4 games into the season for the Sacramento Kings, some great numbers and some bad ones. It's a small sample size. So what is real and what isn't? What is true to how the Sacramento Kings will be this season and what will come back down to earth a little bit? Will Z of Will Z Stats from Sports Illustrated, great writer for the Sacramento Kings. He joins me to break that all down right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all season long. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News. And the early parts of any season are always about trying to figure a team out, right? Trying to figure out what's real and what's not. That's why a lot of people say you need to give a team like 20 games to kind of give you a true idea of who they are. But when you host a daily podcast, who's got time to wait for 20 games? We got 2 days off between last night's Kings win and the next time the Kings play in Atlanta against the Hawks. So why not take this time to kind of look at these first 4 games, look at what the numbers are telling us with this team and try and figure out, hey, what is real? Are the Domantas Sabonis scoring numbers to start this season real? Are the Kings having 3 20-point per game scores to start the season real? Is the Kevin Huerter defense real? We'll discuss it. We'll break through it, find out what numbers are astronomically high that just by law of averages are destined to come down and which numbers might really stay true throughout a full 82-game season. Plus, where do the Sacramento Kings rank amongst other NBA teams? What do the numbers tell us in many different ways? Will Z joins me right now to work through those questions. 4 games isn't a large sample size by any means, but early on, we're trying to figure out with this Sacramento Kings team what is real and what might be just a good start or a bad start or a flash in the pan of 4 games out of an 82-game season. And here to break down the numbers behind it, I've got Will Z Stats, as he's known. If you're not familiar with Will Z's work, one, you should be reading his work. He writes about the Sacramento Kings for Sports Illustrated. Go and check that out. But Will is a numbers guy, and I love it because he always brings good statistical context as well as the eye test context to what we talk about. Happy to have Will Z back here on Locked On Kings. Will, before we even dive into the numbers and what we think is real or not, I don't know about you. It's just nice to see the Sacramento Kings, first off, win both games of a back-to-back this early in the season and to handle their business comfortably, I would say, against 2 teams that we knew and believed they were better than, and they proved it, I won't say easily, but there was no doubt. And I think that's the biggest thing I took away from those first 2 games or those last 2 games.
Yeah, definitely 2 good, pretty solid wins, like you said, in 2 problem areas that we saw last year. So it's just great, especially early in the season. If you have trends that you know were around the previous season, just get those out of the way. They're not going to be an issue, ideally, going forward this year, and they're taking a step in the right direction for both of those. So nice to kind of put us at ease a little bit just early on.
Well, there's one number that I know is real because it's happened for over a decade. And I'm going to bring it up so we can talk about it, but this is not one we have to kind of debate and figure out. 4 games for DeMar DeRozan as a Sacramento King, 4 performances of 20 or more points. The guy's been averaging 20 points or more per game for 11 straight seasons, right? And I don't know why anybody thought, even though he's a year older, right? His age is irrelevant because half of that time he's been in his 30s. So I don't know why anybody thought it was going to be any different here in Sacramento. The dude is just a bucket. He scores, whether it's getting to the foul line or getting to that mid-range jumper, even hit a couple of threes in the 4th quarter against the Los Angeles Lakers, right? DeMar DeRozan is just a walking bucket. So I know the 20 points per game average, really it's like 24 points per game that he has right now. I know that's real. What have you thought about his offensive start?
I think it's just the way that he goes about scoring too is he's hitting those numbers on a really good efficiency. So getting to the line, I mean, is a great help in and of itself. And to be able to make the free throws at the rate that he is even better. But if you look at his field goal attempts, he isn't attempting an outrageous number of field goal attempts to get to that 20-point mark, 18, 12, 14, 14. And he needs the ball in his hand to operate at times, but he's not taking away from the Kings as an offense as a whole, as they have really done a good job, I think, early on to incorporate him into the offense and build new aspects of his game into it. And that's just 4 games. Like, we have so many more to get to and to see where this offense, what it becomes throughout the season.
That was such a fallacy, this idea that DeMar DeRozan being here was suddenly going to become a vacuum and was going to take opportunity away, especially to someone like Keegan Murray, right? Keegan had that great start in his first game of the season. He's had I think he had 14 points last night, kind of some lower scoring games for him, but he's still making winning plays and getting his looks. It's not like DeMar is taking that from him or Kevin Huerter or anybody else on this Kings team. But one thing we've noticed very quickly about DeMar DeRozan is how much the game slows down because of him. And it's not that it negatively impacts the Kings' offensive pace. It's just that he gets to the line so much, there's just more stoppages. And it's good for the Sacramento Kings to be on the right side of that than the wrong side. His free throw shooting is good. We expected that. But the team's free throw shooting has been really good for the majority of these 4 games. How much do you think... I mean, obviously DeMar has a significant impact on that, but how real do you think that is that the Sacramento Kings, I believe they're at the top or right towards the top of free throw shooting percentage so far to start that season? Do you think that
I think last I checked, they were at the top, but that may have shifted a little, if not at the very top, close. But I mean, Fox is shooting 93.8% on his free throws this year, which is just...
That'll come down.
That would lead the league in most seasons or be near the top of the league. So that'll probably come down a touch, maybe not. I know that the Kings worked on it a lot during training camp. I think I heard they would shoot free throws between drills, right, to practice tired. And I think that we're seeing just a slight uptick across the board. Sabonis is at 76%, which, again, you could ask for a little higher. But I think that's a touch higher, pulling it up. A touch higher from last year when he was at 70.4, and that would be his career high from the free throw line. So that'd be great if he can keep that up as well, which I don't think 76 is an outrageous number. So hopefully we're seeing that shift where if both Fox and Sabonis have improved their free throws with DeRozan coming in with that volume. That was the hard part about last year, was the Kings' 2 best free throw shooters weren't the Kings' 2 highest volume free throw shooters were also average or below average. So we're just seeing the 3 of them kind of creating this efficiency at the free throw line that we haven't seen before. And it's great. Missed free throws are tough to watch.
I think the Kings' free throw improvement in general is real. I do think this team is going to be a significantly better free throw shooting team. To this level, swinging from worst in the league to best in the league, I don't think that's real, right? De'Aaron Fox is not going to shoot in the 90s percentile-wise from the free throw line for the entire season. That being said, it would be amazing. That being said, the Kings are clearly a better free throw shooting team, and they've relied on that free throw shooting at times to carry them through aspects of the game. You think about the Portland game, how ugly that first half was, and the Kings scored 17 points at the free throw line alone in that first half to kind of weather the storm of the missed shot. So free throw shooting, already a big difference for the Sacramento Kings. Going back to scoring, though, the leading scorer for your Sacramento Kings right now is Domantas Sabonis, averaging 24 points per game. I thought Sabonis, one of the major concerns, Will, as you know, with Sabonis was, he's a $40 million per year player now, but can he be a reliable scorer at that level, right? Offense is and the amount of points that you can score is always looked at as the most important stat, especially for high-paid players. Well, Sabonis has started this season with no hesitation, not just shooting the ball, and we'll get to the shooting numbers in a bit, but looking to score. And here he is leading the Sacramento Kings through the first 4 games. I don't expect him to lead the Kings for the season offensively, but how real do you think this more offensively scoring gifted version of Domantas Sabonis is?
I think it's Very real. In terms of, like you said, his efficiency, I think will probably come down a touch just because it's at such an absurd level. Like 60, where did it go? So many stats. 67.9% from the field and 54.5% from three. Those will probably come down a touch, but those are just wild numbers to start with. But why I think it's real is the confidence that he's showing. Like, he is not hesitating at all on his three-point shot. On his passes, the Kings are doing a ton of backdoor cuts, and he is hitting those with confidence. Just, it seems like everything he's doing looks impressive because it's him doing it, but it's also looks easy because he's the one doing it, if that makes any sense at all. Like, it looks easy for him in this offensive system, I think.
This is the most I've ever seen him like call for that shot, because he's taken it before, but there was a play that stuck out to me, and it might have been LA. I don't remember what game it was, but Domas ran his high pick and roll with, I think, De'Aaron Fox, and popped out to the top, like the straightaway 3-point shot, and was in the crouch, and you could see him calling for the ball back from Fox. Fox gave it to him. He ended up missing the shot. But that's a different version of Domantas Sabonis from last year, where he would catch that pass and look at the rim and like kind of do his pump fake that nobody believes, because it's the slowest pump fake on the play. He always does it. Nobody buys it. But he likes to do it to kind of give himself time. And then he'd always look to pass after that. That pump fake isn't happening anymore. He's going right into it. And it's the same thing with him getting the ball on the block and putting his shoulder and attacking, not waiting, scanning, and then realizing there's nothing there. Now I'm going to attack. He just has this mindset of, I'm going to score the basketball early. I don't know what the motivation is behind that, if Mike Brown is challenging him more, working with Doug Christie or whatever. But that next level of Domantas Sabonis scoring really takes away the last major criticism, especially if he can do it in the postseason, takes away the last major criticism that all these people have worked so hard to try and find to dismiss what Sabonis is doing.
Yeah, and the fact that the Kings are even running his corner looks from three, like, those seem like pretty set plays, or at least things that they've practiced before, where it's just like a dribble drive from DeRozan, drawing the help defender, kick out to Sabonis in the corner. Like, he didn't take many corner threes last year. So the Kings kind of setting those looks up intentionally for him, I think, shows their confidence in him as well in taking the outside look. But he just is playing out of his mind in so many facets, and it's so fun to watch. He everywhere across the board too, where if you look at his scoring, if you want some more numbers, his scoring in the restricted area, he's shooting 80%, in the floater area 57.1%, mid-range 66.7%, 2 of 2 on his corner threes, and 4 of 9 above the break. So he's doing it literally everywhere on the court. And with the options around him and the defense, how do you stop that?
Like I said at the top of the show, today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by Gametime. This is the app that you need to go to now to get your tickets, whether it's Sacramento Kings tickets throughout the remainder of the season, NFL tickets, college athletics tickets, any sporting event tickets, or if you're looking for concert tickets or tickets to your local comedy show or whatever, the theatrical production, whatever it may be, Gametime has the tickets for you. And they have this feature. It's so simple, but it's so effective, called Gametime Picks. It makes getting tickets to your favorite teams and favorite events easier than ever. It filters out all the fluff to only show you incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets, especially for those really big events. That's just one of their amazing, great features, like their all-in pricing feature. It shows you exactly what your total is going to be up front, no hidden fees and surprise fees at checkout. Their seat views are better than you'll find anywhere else. Panoramic views from your seat, so you know exactly what your view is going to look like. Plus, they have the lowest price guarantee. Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference if you find the same tickets on a different site for a lower price. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime Picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. Now, Will, you know you're my numbers guy. You're the guy I go to first for numbers. I'm not cheating on you here, but I'm taking this number from the Stat Mamba account on Twitter, and this was circulating a little bit last night. I wonder how real this is. The Kings have 3 20-plus point per game scorers, right? Sabonis is at 24. You have DeRozan at 23, Fox at 21.5. They've been like the only trio in franchise history to start a season averaging 20 or more points per game since 1961. I don't know how well those numbers are going to carry through an entire 82-game season. The Kings have had 3 20-point per game scores before, and it was when they had Rudy Gay, DeMarcus Cousins, and Isaiah Thomas. That team was terrible. This team is not terrible. So there are a lot of mouths to feed on this team, but to have 3 20-point per game scores this early in the season really speaks to, hey, the Kings have a legit big 3 now.
They do. I don't know how they can keep that up throughout the season or if they will. So far, it's been super even where we haven't seen a huge game. I think Sabonis is the only one who's broke the 30-point barrier. So they're doing it on a nightly basis where it's very well-rounded offense. I'm sure we'll see nights where someone goes for 40 or have those typical big nights, but maybe it's just the way they go, and that's what makes them so difficult to guard is if you put focus on one person, this other person will take advantage. But they all, I think, are getting the looks that the bench isn't getting anymore. So there's more shots to go around with so much of the bench outside of Monk being defensive guys that I think we're going to see those starters just have more shots than other teams' starters with the way the rotations work out.
Does it bother you at all that Fox is number 3 out of those 3 in offensive points per game?
It doesn't, especially with his assist numbers being high. And it feels like it's going to ebb and flow all year between who's leading between the 3. I feel like they'll all be around that 22-ish point mark. And that'll probably go up and down. I personally don't have any preference who leads the team in scoring. I will look at, especially with this team and the way the roster is set up, I'll look at field goal percentage and efficiency more than the total numbers because I think that tells a bigger story. But that's just personal preference.
Yeah, I mean, I look at this start to the season for De'Aaron Fox, and ultimately what I take away from it is that De'Aaron is making winning plays and making the right play, not making the selfish play. Now, De'Aaron's never been a selfish player. The Kings have needed him to lead them in scoring for them to have a chance. They clearly don't need that right now, and there's obviously an emphasis to start this season on getting DeMar DeRozan comfortable and learning how to play with DeRozan. So I don't expect De'Aaron Fox to be number 3 in the points per game list out of those 3 by the end of the season. That being said, if he is, and the Kings are a 50-plus win team, who cares? Now, I don't know if that's going to be good enough for him to make an all-NBA team again, which is what makes him eligible for the Supermax. So maybe that will kind of kick him into gear into trying to score more if that really is a chief motivation of his. But if I'm looking at the way De'Aaron Fox is playing so far, and I've seen him have games in the teens, and he had a 28-point game in the loss in LA, and that end of that third quarter where he hit those back-to-back pull-up threes was just nasty work by him. But the way I look at the way De'Aaron Fox is playing, I just sum it up as winning basketball. And ultimately, I think that's what's more important than any individual number that he could have.
Yeah, and it still looks easy for him. Like, it doesn't look like he's playing at full speed for the whole game, which I think is a good thing. The fact that he doesn't have to work as hard. I think his defense has been great. The Kings are holding guards, I think, well under what their averages are. I haven't done a deep dive analysis. That's just eye test. But I think Fox still has yet to hit his stride in the offense. But with that, it's not like he's playing poorly. I just think that he'll kind of figure things out a little bit more. I did anticipate him being the leader in points per game coming into the season. He's averaged more than DeRozan in terms of points per game when he was on the Bulls for, I think, the last 2 years. But, yeah, I think Fox is – and correct me if I'm wrong, something about his finger? Do you know?
Yeah, so he's got a lingering finger issue, and I know this was kind of discussed a little bit with the G-Man recently, Gary Gerald on the radio side. But yeah, he does have a lingering issue with his finger. Fox is perpetually banged up. Just the way that De'Aaron Fox played, which also is one of the reasons why I think Fox is had more of a reliance recently on that 3-point shot because he's not trying to get clobbered every time he goes to the rim. But Fox he banged knees in like game 1 of the season, I'm pretty sure, with Dante DiVincenzo. So Fox plays through a lot of injuries. I don't think it's anything to be overly concerned about, but yes, De'Aaron Fox is definitely banged up a little bit.
Yeah, just the course of an NBA season and take its tolls, I'm sure.
All right, so let's talk about the defense a little bit more too, because De'Aaron Fox's defense has been pretty good, but I want to talk about the defense of the shooting guard position. Keon Ellis last night played unbelievable defense.
Phenomenal.
Like he's everywhere. The numbers that he puts up, like he always has numbers in the steals column, numbers in the blocks column, and then of course he does all those little things that don't show up in a box score. One of the most surprising parts so far of this Kings season, in my opinion, has been Keon Ellis' playing time and the comments of Mike Brown before the Portland game that Keon was going to play situational minutes. Well, I don't see how you keep this guy off the floor. You got to find minutes for Keon Ellis on a nightly basis because defensively, just in general, he's so impactful that he makes a difference.
Yeah, he's always in the right place. He has the best hands, I think, that I've ever seen in terms of getting his hands on the ball. And that leads to deflections, that leads to steals. He's able to cover both his man and get in passing lanes, his recovery time, like every little aspect about defense, he just does so well. And it's really his play style on defense fits exactly what the Kings scheme is built for. That's where I think to look back at Davion, or he was more of a one-on-one defender, is the Kings defense, I think, is built more for help defense than building it around a singular defensive anchor. I think they have that in Keegan now, but they're doing everything as a team to move more in unison. And it sounds like Luke Laux really has them playing well on that side of the ball. And Keon is just it's hard to call him the defensive anchor because he's a guard, but it feels like that with how they're playing.
The Keon Ellis defense was to some extent expected, and I think that is definitely real. Kevin Huerter's defense over the last 2 games has been really, really good. And it's not statistically necessarily, nothing's jumping off. He had like 3 blocks against Portland. Don't expect that to be a thing. I think he had like 2 steals last night. He's going to be up there in deflections because he does a really, really good job at least playing the passing lanes, and he doesn't get enough credit for that. That being said, we know Kevin Huerter defensively is not the best. And on top of that, he's done this against Portland and Utah. How well is he going to fare when the Kings start playing the better teams in the West or the better teams in the league again? That being said, like, we can't undermine or undercut what Kevin Huerter has been doing defensively. And ultimately, my takeaway from this, Will, and I'm curious your thoughts on this, is maybe he won't be as good of a defender as he's shown in the last 2 games. But if he can consistently be active defensively on a nightly basis, that takes away your chief concern because offensively, he's a great fit with this starting unit.
Yeah, and it seems like so much with Huerter too is his defensive effort, and that is 100% there. Like, he is working his butt off on defense, and you can see it. His commitment to rotating, and the Kings as a whole in terms of getting their rotations. But you see Huerter, he gets back, he covers his man. He's not a otherworldly. He's not going to keep his guy in front of him every single time, but he's putting himself in the right spot over and over again. And with his length, I think people forget he's 6'7". Like, he is a taller shooting guard with, I forget his wingspan, but at least 6'7". And he's using that to his advantage, both to get deflections with the rest of the team and to contest shots.
The last thing I want to talk to you about, the offensive rebounding is what really, I think, solidifies this for me. But I talked about this a lot on last night's podcast. I feel like this emphasis on not allowing your opponents to outwork you is really apparent in these last 2 games. I think, truth be told, I think that's the key to the best version of the Sacramento Kings is every single night they can control how they can control that they outwork their opponents. Doesn't mean everything's going to go their way. Doesn't mean shots are always going to fall. Doesn't mean you're going to win, but you can always commit. It's a mindset. I commit to outworking my opponent or not allowing a team to outwork me. And the offensive rebounding is one of those areas that you see that. And this emphasis on offensive rebounding is already paying dividends. Last night, 24 second chance points. They converted 10 of 11 second chance opportunities, I'm pretty sure. Like, the Kings are generating more points for themselves and more opportunities simply by crashing the offensive glass. I think one of the absolute superheroes so far to start the season in that area has been Keegan Murray. Keegan seems to love crashing the offensive glass, but this commitment to offensive rebounding, which was an idea that actually came from Kings general manager Monte McNair, I think it's paying dividends already, and it's fitting into this new mindset that the Sacramento Kings want to have. What have you thought about the offensive rebounding numbers and commitment to areas like that make a major difference and can also, quite frankly, like, take the wind out of your opponent's sails?
Yeah, it's really interesting because after the whole preseason, that was the talk in town. And the Kings are currently second to last in offensive rebounds per game, but it doesn't feel like that.
No.
They, I think, are just doing such a good job on the opportunities, and I'm pulling that up as well to see what their second chance points are. But like you said, I love Keegan crashing from the wings. Like, he is doing just an incredible job in that position, where if you haven't watch for him from that spot, and you'll see it. He does it all the time. And he gets it a lot of the time. He'll tip it sometimes, or maybe teams are starting to cover him more. But if you look at the Kings, so the Kings offensive rebounds, they've had 4, 5, 9, 9. So an uptick in the last two compared to 6, 13, 12, 12 for their opponents. But their second chance points, so they've scored 7, 13, 15, 24, and their opponents have had 7, 15, 19, 12. So even with losing the offensive rebound battle by a pretty decent amount, they're sticking even on the second chance points, which is really impressive. So they're making the most out of those opportunities, which is more important, I think, than getting more opportunities.
Finally, Will, another area that's jumped off the page too is the Kings are forcing a ton of turnovers, and they did this a lot during preseason too. It doesn't necessarily always show up in steal numbers, although their steals have been high, but the Kings are doing a really, really good job of disrupting teams and scoring off of those turnovers. What have the numbers been saying, or what do the numbers say about just how well the Kings can force turnovers this season? Because that could be even if you're not a great defensive team, if you're forcing a team to turn the ball over with the offense that you have, you should be able to exploit that and win games a lot.
Yeah, so like you said, they're doing it in multiple ways, and steals isn't the end-all be-all. They are 6th in steals with 9 per game. But if you look at the other way, turnovers, their opponents' turnovers are 17.8. That's the 5th most in the league. So they're definitely turning their opponents over the most. And if we look at the points off turnovers, as I switch over, they are scoring 22.8 per game. That's 5th most in the league. And comparing that to opponents, holding opponents to 14.5 for, let's see, middle of the pack. Bottom of the pack, 8th in the league. So they're winning that battle pretty much every night as well in terms of the average, where that, I think, is their defensive identity and how they're using it to help their offense. If they don't have a shot blocker, they don't have someone to protect the rim, but they're using their steals, the disruption, the turnovers. That is how they are rising to the 6th or 8th ranked defense. I forget the number, but a top 10 defense, which is something we've been dreaming about for years.
Yeah, I don't know how real a top 10 defense in Sacramento is, but it's nice to
Mm-hmm.
see them at least capable of doing it, even if it's for a small sample size. We'll see how much that carries through. Will, keep up the fantastic work that you do with your articles for Sports Illustrated on the Sacramento Kings. Of course, you can hear Will Z all the time on ESPN 1320, providing some of the numbers there on D'Lo and KC. And when he's nice enough to join me here on Locked On Kings, I really appreciate it. So, Will, get back to your family, my man. I took you away from family time. I appreciate it. Happy Halloween to you, my guy. And we'll get together again very soon and maybe relook at some of these numbers and see which have held strong and which maybe came back down to earth a little bit.
Hopefully it's just looking at ones that continue to stay strong. Thanks so much, Matt. I really appreciate it.